He was actually right on the money. Well, in any event, at that time, just imagine you were driving along the Blue Ridge Parkway and you heard the news about B&P Parabolic and your car went off the road, you're on the shoulder a little bit. But you're not too worried about it because you still have control of the car. You think you're going to be able to get back on the road. And the economy at that time, in August of 2007, the line that's on that chart, we had 3.5% GDP growth. That's pretty good. The unemployment rate was around 4.5%. So we had good momentum in the economy. So, you know, if you run off the road and you got good momentum, you can usually get back on the road. So you think, okay, I'm going to get back on the road. On top of that, the Federal Reserve had the funds rate at 5.25%, so they could cut rates if they needed to, give us a little more juice. The budget deficit was relatively small, it was only $160 billion. I mean, that's relatively small when you look at what's happening today. Now, but it was projected to move to the balance, so we could cut taxes, send everybody a rebate check. We were going to get the economy going again, you know? And so we thought that, yes, this is serious. This credit crisis was serious, and the economy was slow, but we wouldn't have a recession. But the credit crisis kept getting worse. Every month it seemed like another mortgage company, Americredit or New Century, was going belly up. And those in the business knew that these companies were selling lots of stuff. The Bear Stearns, and Lehman Brothers, and Merrill Lynch. And so that New Century went belly up, and we knew it was only a matter of time before Bear Stearns and Merrill Lynch were going to go belly up. And so we began to see the credit markets really seize up. It got harder and harder for us to get the car back on the road. Sure enough, Bear Stearns did go belly up. And a lot of people thought, hey, you know, they didn't go belly up. They were bought by J.P. Morgan. Hey, problem solved. And we didn't. People still thought we could avoid a recession. Tough times. Then Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And then in September, Lehman Brothers failed. Except for this time, it was a real failure. They weren't married off to another financial services company. They failed. And anybody that Lehman Brothers owed money to, well, didn't pay. He's not getting paid in full. And when that happened, it was almost as if we went around the corner and found ourselves in a deep fog, and we weren't that familiar with the road, and we missed a turn, went right through the guardrail, went off the side of the mountain. GDP in the fourth quarter last year declined at 5.3% annual rate. I don't know that for sure. It comes out tomorrow morning at 8:30. What I do know is that non-farm employment, which had been losing jobs all year, suddenly just fell like a stone, and we lost 1.5 million jobs. So we're off the side of the mountain in the fourth quarter. In the first quarter, where we are now, we'll hit the trees. GDP is supposed to decline at about 4% annual rate, maybe 4.5. In the second quarter, in the spring, we should hit the dirt. Cars still be skidding along. We're going to decline about a 2% annual rate. And sometime in the second half of the year, it may not be until Christmas, the car will come to a screeching halt, and that's when the recession ends. You stop falling, the car falls. But when the recession ends, we're scrambling around trying to find our cell phone, hoping we can get reception so somebody can call AAA and pull us out of the ditch. That's what. So when the recession ends, our problems are not over. That's when we hit bottom. And that's when we'll be at the end of the year. In 2010, the recovery will start. It will be relatively modest. It won't be until the tail end of 2010 that growth is expected to be about 2%. That's important because until growth gets above 2%, even though the economy is growing, the unemployment rate will likely continue to increase. So it may be the end of 2010 before the unemployment rate tops out. And then in 2011, we will begin to see a real recovery. And it may be then that people actually realize that things have turned around, but they will have turned around before then. And in 2012, the economy should be doing very well. Well enough that we'll probably re-elect Obama by an easy margin. Because when you think about it, how hard will it be to have a better economy in 2012 than it was in 2008? Not going to be that hard. So, you know, that's kind of, and if there's anything I feel certain about, it's that in 2012, the economy will be stronger. They will do 2 or 3 more stimulus packages if they have to. Go ahead and flip to the next one. And One thing that I wanted to point out, which is kind of ironic, it's kind of an irony. I spoke to a truck stop. I talked to a lot of different groups. I talked to the owners of truck stops earlier this week, and they're a real American group. They're a proud group, and anyway, I had mentioned, I said, if there's any kind of comedic irony in this, is that the problems that are impacting our economy in this recession are not limited to our borders. We are exporting our economic troubles to the rest of the world. And to some people, they're happy about that. But in any event, this recession is the worst since 81-82. In 1981-82, 60% of what consumers bought were goods, 40% were services. Remember, after housing, consumer spending is the second hardest hit area. 60% of what we bought back then were goods, 40% were services, and 2/3 of the goods we bought were made in the United States. So when we went into recession, the Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, they took it on the chin. And that's where the term Rust Belt really got to be known. People just poured out of the Midwest and moved to Texas and moved to the South. It was big out migration to the Rust Belt. Well, today, 40% of what we buy are goods, 60% are services. So the recession is not going to be felt as hard in the Midwest. On top of that, 2/3 of the goods that we buy, if you exclude consumables. So Kellogg's Rice Krispies, Coca-Cola, Budweiser, we make that stuff. But if you exclude the food stuff, things that you buy and eat or drink, 2/3 of what we buy, those goods are imported. And so when consumer spending pulls back, we're not buying as many plasma TVs, we're not buying as many Toyotas. And these guys are hurting in a way that they've never seen before. And if you don't believe me, ride up to Jacksonville or fly up to Jacksonville and look at all the cars, you'll see Toyotas for as far as the eye can see. They estimate they have a 6-month supply of Toyotas at a normal sales rate. At today's sales rate, they probably have more than a year's supply of cars out there. And so, because they're not selling cars today, they won't even tell you. We'll find out next week, I guess, what the sales were. But they won't even tell you what they're really selling for. But in any event, if you look at domestic demand instead of GDP, the production of goods and services, look at what we're buying, regardless of where we're buying it from, the economy is far weaker and it will decline all the way through the year 2009. In January, we're expecting 80,000 stores to shut their doors. Of course, tomorrow's the last day of January, so many of these guys will shut their doors by the end of January, certainly by the end of January. Many are running liquidation sales. They've effectively sold, they've effectively half closed their doors. They're hiring, they're not really, even though you're shopping, you can still shop at their store, they don't own the store anymore. It's owned by the liquidator. And and I've seen estimates as much as 500,000 stores will close this year. In terms of car dealers, 1/3 of the car dealers in the United States will close this year. So there's a lot of car dealers shut down. Many of them will be the domestic car makers. It makes a lot of sense. Car sales were at a 17 million unit rate. They're now at a 10 million unit rate. They're probably going to rise to an 11 million unit rate in 2010. So, you know, if the car industry's selling only a third fewer cars, then we need a third fewer car dealers. So we're going to see that kind of pain throughout the retail sector. In terms of financial services, we haven't really seen a consolidation yet. The TARP has slowed things down, but I think that beginning, probably this weekend, we will begin to see the consolidation of the financial sector begin to pick up in a big way. We'll begin to see a lot of smaller banks will be closed down, merged into larger banks, and we will begin to see a lot of banks go out of existence. The other thing that's happening is when you see all these new banks spring up all the time, or people start with new banks. It's not going to happen this year or next year. You can't get a bank charter. You can raise $35 million. You go knock on the Fed's door and say, hey, we want to start a new bank. And they're going to say, fine, you can have that application. And you won't hear back from them. So it's